Hello, once again, out there in radio or, well, I guess podcast land. It's Bobby and Tom. We're back with another installment of the Noise Brigade, and we thought we'd bring you a little bit of video game action today.
Yeah. So it was funny. You and I have this kind of live Google document, if you will, that we just kind of pitch ideas back and forth. And we had talked video games a while ago, but it was like just like sports video games.
Right.
And I kind of threw this thing out there because a lot of the games that we had talked about were just either older, forgotten. Um, Maybe they just weren't that popular. And I was like, well, let's just kind of expand on that for all genres of video games. But I kind of figured, and you have a lot more notes here. Like before we get into that aspect of this, what about just video games in general? So, what do you have news wise on the horizon for folks, the two people that may actually listen?
Well, the first thing, the first thing I just wanted to nail down was, dude, how huge was it that Microsoft not only was able to figure out a way to weasel their way into getting the show, but on launch day, it's on Game Pass. So, if you're on PS4, PS5, you're paying what is it now? $70 for the show, right?
Yeah,
So
yep.
so if you're on Game Pass, you're paying $70 for the show on PS5, 60, I believe, if you're on PS4. Um, but if you're on Xbox One, you're paying $60 for it. Or if you're on Xbox One or One Series X, Series S, whatever nomenclature they have for it, and you have Game Pass, you're paying $15 and you're getting it the same day as your PlayStation and your normal Xbox, just physical or digital copies that people are paying
Yeah,
60 to
that's a
70
sweet
dollars.
that's a sweet deal. And honestly, I really think that this is where this is the next avenue to go. Now there's been these live services for both PlayStation and Microsoft for a long time now, but really kind of the way of HBO Max, and they started releasing these supposed to go to theater type movies, but they're putting them on their service because, well, the pandemic.
Right.
I honestly think this is the next avenue, and you're going to see that, and the prices are going to, like you said, $15 to play the same game on release day. Now, granted, yeah, there's a lot of other cost incurred into that, but if it's a subscription, man, I'm not paying 70.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's $15, and then you can play it on Xbox. If you have an Xbox One, an Xbox One X, an Xbox One S, the Xbox Series X, or the Xbox Series S, or if you have a Windows PC uh, that's capable, you can stream Game Pass to that, and you're paying $15, and it's not just, it's obviously not just the show that you're getting. You're getting every other game that's on Game Pass, and
yeah, exactly. Yep.
it's amazing. It's amazing. And I could be wrong on the pricing. I believe they might have upped it because now they've actually bundled it with the former Xbox Live Gold, which they now call the whole deal the Xbox Network. So taking a cue from PlayStation there with their PSN and PS or PlayStation Network, they're now calling it the Xbox Network. And with that comes your what used to be Xbox Live Gold, which is what you needed to play online against each other, as well as Game Pass. So
Yeah, that's a huge deal, and it's funny. You and I had talked about this back and forth about the new generation. Oh, which one do you want to get? And I've gotten to see the PS5 finally. I don't have one, but I finally got to see one like kind of live in the flesh. And as cool as I think it is, and being a big Sony person that I am, and when I say that, I mean like the televisions in my house are Sony televisions. So um, I'm just a big Sony fan, but it's like service related. I'm much more inclined to go the other route and say, you know what, I'm going to give the Xbox a try over just because of that reason right there, that service, and that the ability to now have games that were only PlayStation specific before, and it's like, oh, now you have that. Here we go. It's a different ball game. No pun
right,
intended.
Well, and so going along with the with this same direction that we're heading here, yeah, right now it's limited to Xbox and Windows PCs, but I've heard rumblings, Microsoft and Nintendo have been getting kind of buddy buddy lately with letting um, Microsoft characters into Smash Brothers and stuff like that. And Microsoft actually publishing some games on the Nintendo hardware. Um, so what I'm thinking and what I've been hearing rumors of is that Xbox Network with Game Pass ends up eventually on the Switch.
And that's very possible. And it's funny. I actually have a note about this later, um, talking about the Stadia. Google's gaming environment. I think a lot of things are going to end up going that way, regardless of the device that you're on. It's just a matter of what's on the back end, and really, truth be told, what kind of connection that you have to make all that happen. Because the hardware, at the end of the day, may not make that much of a difference, which is hard to kind of think about. But as things have gone forward, it's also kind of true. So it's certainly interesting to think about.
Yeah. And so now that we've started talking a little bit about Nintendo, let's get into some of these little leaks and stuff that I've been hearing about the Switch. So first, let's start with the stuff that's concrete, some stuff that came out in the past 2 weeks or so that's kind of interesting to see. One of the things is the latest firmware update allows for firmware updates to be completed on the dock itself and Bluetooth audio to be able to use for the headset or for Bluetooth headsets. Um,
Yes.
so that's interesting because there had been a little cottage industry of Bluetooth adapters that plug into the USB-C on the Switch that would allow you to use Bluetooth headsets. But now it seems like it's being put in natively. Um, so that's interesting to see.
Yeah, and that was one of those weird things that I thought, why wasn't this native before? Because it's just audio and it's
Right.
just Bluetooth. And I don't know how many over the years, gosh, for like the last decade, how many Bluetooth speakers that you run across that you have that, oh, yeah, you connect your phone or your laptop to it, but why not the Switch? It was weird, but it's good to see that it's finally making its way.
Well, Nintendo's been notoriously slow with that kind of stuff, so it didn't surprise me that much.
Yeah, they like to play it close to the chest.
Yeah. Now, the
You
other
know.
thing that came out that was very interesting. Oh, one more update before we move on to that. So now they've finally, after over a year, put out a patch for Super Mario Party where now you can play online against people.
Oh, neat. Very cool.
So we'll definitely have to get the kiddos in on that and
Yes,
play as
yeah,
many.
yeah, they'd love that. I was completely unaware of that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that just dropped maybe 2 3 days ago. Um,
Cool. Great.
so pretty cool there. The other big news with the Switch that's concrete is current model system on a chip that composes the Switch hardware has actually been discontinued. So what that would lead us to believe, because I know this, the Switch has been selling like gangbusters. I can't imagine it's going anywhere, but that would really put some fuel on the fire, stating that Nintendo really is putting out, and for lack of a better name, I'm going to call it the Super Nintendo Switch before the holidays. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen things like Super Nintendo Switch or what Switch Pro or whatever
right,
people want to dub it, and talking about resolution and then playing handheld resolution to match whatever you can dock at, and these different obviously upgraded processors and just these different things that could potentially come with it. The one thing I did see, which I really like, um, and not that I play mine handheld or the kids even do it as much as this would recall, but the battery life, that's certainly one of those things that, yeah, you play an intense game, that thing doesn't last very long, comparative to like maybe a cell phone.
right.
But so that would be nice to see, like, hey, maybe you can double the time, or just some different things, make it a little more powerful, or like I said before, up the res a little bit. And these different things that are coming out, I think are certainly all capable. Technology keeps advancing, and really, truth be told, when the Switch was originally released, it was kind of dated then, but they just made it work,
Right.
you know. So now it's time now, in my opinion.
Well, and that's the thing too is I mean Nintendo themselves have even basically admitted as much when around maybe a year and a half into the release of the Switch, they quietly released an updated uh, in some updated internals where it had longer battery life. They didn't do it, they didn't announce it to the world like, oh, hey, you can get this new one and it's got, an extra hour or two of battery life. They did it really, really under the radar, dropped it, and the way you could tell was the design on the box. That was the only way to tell.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I remember. Yeah. I remember them doing that. I knew that it wasn't a specific release. Like you said, it was completely under the radar.
right, right. So now the other thing, obviously, that they need to do is fix the Joy-Con drift
Oh,
because
yes. Yeah.
I've had too many Joy-Cons that have died, and honestly, I mean, they're easy enough to replace. The sticks are easy enough to replace, but I don't feel like replacing them, man. I shouldn't have to when I'm spending $80 on a controller.
Exactly. It's one thing if they're $20 a piece.
Right.
And then, okay, fine, they go out, then we're just going to keep swapping them out without even taking them apart. It's almost like just a, disposable at that point.
Right.
But $80 a piece, I completely agree. My, as far as I know, my original Nintendo joypad still works, and it's 5 years old.
Right.
So
Right. Well, dude, you know all of my systems out there, and I've replaced some Nintendo 64 analog sticks, but that's the only system that I've ever had to make, disassemble and reassemble the controllers because they stopped working.
yeah, it's weird too because it's not like they were cheap. To me, they weren't cheaply made. It's I guess because of just whatever their deal is with whatever they're using, and potentially some oddball, between maybe force the player, maybe some kind of goofy thing with firmware gets out there because those things have their own updates. Who knows? It's a shame that they're $80 a piece. That's all I'm saying, because
Yeah.
they shouldn't be that high in the first place. You shouldn't have to sit there and be like, oh, I gotta fix them. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, I'm the same way, and we don't really play hours that much, but it's like there should be no reason why I have 5 sets of Joy Cons for
Exactly.
a couple of switches. So
Right. Right. We have two Switches in our house, and we have gone through, I want to say, 8 sets of Joy Cons, and
yeah,
it's
so
not
it's
like.
crazy.
And honestly, I'm not. I mean, it's Peyton's not abusing them. I'm watching him play. He's not abusing them. I'm not abusing them. The one set we had, the battery bulged in it, and the only reason I
Wow.
figured it out was we were playing Super Mario Party, and there was the one game where you had to feel the vibration of the Joy-Con to know when the food was cooked, like the little steak cube.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just sitting there waiting, and I'm not doing anything because I'm like, well, it's not shaking. It's not. What am I doing wrong? And then I realized that I wasn't hearing the little, like, what's really. I mean, honestly, you got to hand it to Nintendo for what's in there. If it worked 100% properly, those things are little marvels of engineering. Like it can play music, like a not intricate music, but it can play a little tune with the HD vibration, with the HD rumble.
Hmm.
Because it does that when it's your turn in Super Mario Party. It'll go doo, 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 or whatever, and I'm not going to do that again, so don't ask me. But it does that on your controller, so that's really cool. But then my controller's not doing anything because the friggin' battery bulge and it's not able to do anything.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, no, and you're completely right. They are super interesting pieces of technology, and I'm sure you're aware of this. When maybe a lot of people aren't. There's a camera on those things.
yeah,
And that, like, to me, like whenever we first cracked out the Labo, when that first came out, and the first, like, really one of the first things you make is like a little car, and you're controlling it with like the switch display. and the car has part of the Joy-Con on it that has the camera on the back end, and it's like, what? Like, I didn't realize it was even in there. So super interesting piece of technology. I just wish it was a little sturdier. Not, it's probably the wrong word. A little more reliable, I guess,
Right.
is the better word. So, but speaking of Switch, though, you did have a note in our document here about Fire Emblem.
Yes.
Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. I'll get into that real quick, and then we'll move on because we've talked a ton of Switch here. Um, but Fire Emblem is one of my favorite series, and I picked it up. I missed out on the GameCube one, I missed out on the Wii one, but which are both extremely expensive, extremely hard to find now. But luckily, I was able to pick it up on the 3DS. And the 3DS one, it was called Fire Emblem Awakenings, and it was kind of the last ditch effort, almost like Final Fantasy was for the NES, where they were like, "All right, you know what? We've tried with Fire Emblem. The American public is just not getting behind this series. This is going to be our last ditch effort. If this doesn't work, we're done." And you can see from, well, I mean, just look at the roster of Super Smash Brothers. It worked. It
Hmm.
worked in a huge way. Since then, they released, I want to say, let's see, so Awakenings, Conquest, Birthright, Echoes, Shadows of Valencia. Um, I think there was one more. No, there wasn't. There was the Fire Emblem Warriors. All of those 5 games all released on the 3DS. Um, and then you had there was also some DS and some Game Boy Advance games that I missed out on too. But that's, again, just showing that there was a lot of games in this series that came out in the United States and it just didn't take off. And it got notoriety through Smash Brothers, and then when Awakenings came out, it took off. Um, the latest addition to the Fire Emblem series in the states and across the world has been Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is friggin' outstanding. If you like strategy RPG games, tactical RPG games, and you haven't played Fire Emblem and you have a Switch, absolutely buy Fire Emblem Three Houses for the Switch. You will not be disappointed. I think I've got like 300 some hours into it.
No,
Uh,
no kidding. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit touched in the head for that, but in any event, uh, what I've heard from some leakers, and they're supposed to be pretty reliable. They were responsible for leaking Fire Emblem Three Houses in the first place. Uh, the game, or the not the Game Boy game, the GameCube game and the Wii game are getting remasters and re-releases for the Switch. Um, we actually just had the 20th or 30th anniversary of Fire Emblem. They released the original NES version of Fire Emblem on the Virtual Console for a limited time. It was you had to buy it by March 31st, so the same day that Mario died, the Fire Emblem remake died. Um, but this stuff is all coming out now, and it was supposed to be out last year, but the pandemic screwed everything up, obviously. And this is just one of them. So I'm super excited about that. And that
So,
kind of leads into what we wanted to talk about too, with
well, before we jump to that, I had one little last segue, and this will be our last Switch. Well, kind of last Switch talk, I guess. But the Fire
Yep.
Emblem thing. So I noticed I fired up Tetris 99 on the Switch the other night, and there is a Fire Emblem theme that you could have won, because Tetris 99 will throw out these like different like kind of weekend type tournaments, and if you like play enough and you do well enough that you unlock the theme. So Fire Emblem was one of them, and
Oh,
you can subsequently you can go back and you can actually purchase them with like the little ticket system that game has.
mhm.
So, but and kind of going back into that, I did want to just kind of briefly mention that Pac-Man 99 was released about a month ago on the Switch,
Okay.
and that is ridiculous fun. So if you subscribe to the service and you like Pac-Man of any degree, that's certainly something I would recommend. So
Cool. I'll have
I'm
to
a big
check
fan of
that
those
out.
those battle royale games are awesome. Pac-Man 99, Tetris 99, Super Mario 35, which unfortunately they, like you said, they axed the service on March 31st. That's done.
Yeah.
Um, I was actually pretty good at that one too.
Yeah,
Um,
I was surprised at how good I was at that. Like
yeah,
that was fun. I didn't spend as much time with it as I would have liked to. I kind of thought that it was going to stick around. I didn't quite understand the whole, oh, it's going to stop working. I thought it was, oh, you can download it up until then and then it'll keep working.
no, no, it's done. Yeah, it's funny because like I've won that one. I've won Super Mario 35 several times. I've won like regular Tetris 99. I've won Invictus mode a time or two. Which, if you're unfamiliar, Invictus mode is only unlocked if you win Tetris 99. I've won the team mode, but I have not won Pac-Man 99 yet. I played the demo for the Google Stadia, which I previously mentioned, called Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle, which is a similar yet different game. Um, and it, the only difference is Pac-Man 99, you don't go from board to board like you do in the one for the Stadia. And I'm probably the only person in the world that even like thought about this, but there are similarities between the games. But I guess, like I said, I suggest that like if you have a Switch and you're into those battle royale type games, and especially the classics, that's a must. That's a must play. It's um, you had gotten me the Space Invaders
Yes.
stuff, and it's in this. It's in that same vein. That's all I can say.
Okay.
So just good stuff. But yeah, so what do we really want to talk about here? We kind of went off there, and the whole point of this one was to talk about what?
Well, I mean, there's one more thing I got to talk about just based on the timing that we're doing this and because of some previous news that we had here. So this past weekend was the NFL draft.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot about our good old. I needed my NFL 2K5 update.
So I've got a great update, man. So I figured this out and I don't know why I didn't figure it out before. So after the draft and before the preseason games start, I figured out how to rack up a ton of picks. I mean, it doesn't help it helps to a degree because it helps you, stockpile picks and you can draft the best players that you can draft. Um, but obviously you got to sign them. But here's the deal. So instead of because at the beginning of the year, before any game's been played, the game doesn't really know who's got the first pick and who's got the 32nd pick. So what it does is it goes alphabetically. So the
Ooh,
Vikings every single preseason have the 32nd pick in the first in each round of the draft. So there's a value to every single pick. You're not going to trade when you make a trade with somebody. If you're trading for the first pick in the first round, you're going to have to give up a heck of a lot more than you're going to have to give up for the 32nd pick in the first round. So, what you can do if you're, you know, desperate enough to want to actually sit there and go through all this is you can go through and sign players and you can, as long as you don't give them a signing bonus, you can then take those players and flip them with no cap penalty at all and get higher draft or better draft picks from these
right.
teams by working backwards from the Vikings all the way up to I don't remember who the first team in the I think it's the 49 well the 49ers.
Oh, right,
49ers
right. Yep. That
are
makes
are
sense.
always the most expensive draft picks that you can get because they're always ranked number 1 at the beginning of the season or in the preseason. So working your way backwards through the teams by team name like that, you can rack up a ton of awesome draft picks. And then you know what? Hey, you could conceivably have the entire, you probably get 15 first round picks. And then it's just make it, it's that getting that quantity, you can make sure that you don't miss on them. Because I've had some, I mean, let's face it, the game is great. I love it. It's got its flaws. One of them being the scouting system, where I've drafted guys that, according to the scouting system, should be just lights out, just awesome, and they suck. So,
Ryan Leaf.
well, you know what? I've drafted many Ryan Leafs in my time. So yeah, that's our 2K news of the week that we've got here. And speaking of 2K, there was a game announced by 2K.
Yeah, and I'm hoping by all that is there, because honestly, the last handful of WWE games just not up to snuff. WWE 2K22, I'm hoping it looks good. You
It
said
does
it.
look good.
But gosh, 21 dropped, and I think people are like, the initial reviews, I was like, I want to be as far away from this thing as humanly possible, which is such a shame, because I remember when WWF Attitude dropped on the PlayStation 2, I think it was, or maybe the original PlayStation.
Now that was
That was
original
original
PlayStation.
PlayStation. I was like, I was like waiting for that game, and you know, and the fact that like you fast forward 20 years and people are just like kind of running running away from it, and just it's funny,
Well, 21
um
didn't even come out because 21, the replacement for
or
20,
2020, that's right, 2020, I'm sorry.
20 was so bad. And I remember seeing videos on YouTube and like wrestlers falling through the ring, you know, faces not being on the
Yeah,
camera,
exactly. Yep. And there
you
was like,
know,
yeah, this
just
person has a, yeah, this person like has a beard, and they like obviously don't. you know
right. Like, last time I checked, Charlotte Flair was not 7 foot with a beard and a mohawk.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting about this past year. Yeah, because 21 actually had the Battlegrounds fill
Yes.
in,
Which
which I know
I dug.
you played it.
Yeah, I liked it. It was fun. I mean, the problem with Battlegrounds is there was a lot to it, but it was bare bones at the same time, which I know it sounds completely counterintuitive to say, but it was super duper grindy. And it felt like, but it was also where you could do microtransactions and buy everything, or you could just grind through it and unlock everything. Um, it had some cool online modes to it, which were fun. Um, but every wrestler, you weren't getting much variety. The wrestlers all had a type, and they all had the same moves with the exception of their special moves. So Stone Cold had the stunner. Um, Randy Orton had the RKO. That kind of stuff. But aside from that, if they were a brawler, they all had the same move set. And by that same token, if they were a high flyer, you couldn't get them to do certain moves that brawlers could do. That kind of stuff. So you would
Yeah.
you would have to make sure you'd have to figure out, okay, this is the fighter type that I work best with. And then you couldn't say, Daniel Bryan, they had listed as a high flyer. So did I use Daniel Bryan even though he was my favorite? No, I couldn't use Daniel Bryan. I used Edge a hell of a lot, but I couldn't use Daniel Bryan. I couldn't really use Finn Balor, if I remember correctly. Um, and it was weird. Like some of the omissions and some of the additions were super weird. Like people that were fired on Black Wednesday last year were still in the game, and the game came out in September, October.
Yeah,
So,
and that
and I,
tells me that it was just like one of those games that was in development for such a long time, that because of everything that transpired in the last year, it was just kind of like, well, this is what we have,
right.
you know. But speaking of wrestling games, though,
Yes.
you got me a copy of this, and I got to play it some, and wow, Retromania. Um,
Retromania.
but talk about delayed, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, here's the deal. There's been all kinds of fire and brimstone online because Retrosoft took so long to get this game out the gates. At the end of the day, I am so happy that they took the time to refine the game
yep,
to make it what it is today rather than giving us a half finished product that, like WWE 2K20 rather. If that's the kind of product they would have released, everybody that complained about how long it took for this to come out would have been even louder in their complaints of, oh, you sold us this game and it's not finished, it sucks, it's this, it's that. No, dude, they did the right thing.
no, I completely agree. I really love, some of the I say attention to detail, but they you know, uh, obviously it's such a different genre of wrestling games, in the sense that like you take like these different people from these different, whether they're, obviously not with us anymore, with the Road Warriors, or you have like Tommy Dreamer or the NWA Power stuff,
Yeah.
and that whole setup is just really cool. And when I say attention to detail, I mean that, they really took the time to kind of, with the engine, if you will, as being a, you know honorary sequel to a classic arcade game. They did it well, and it's smooth, it's fast, and it's fun, and then really that at the end of the day, like that's what you want in a game, and they did it, and yeah, now whether they took a year or two, 10 years, whatever, they delivered on it, and it's a good game.
Right. We're not talking Duke Nukem Forever here, where the game gets announced in 1999 and finally releases in 2012. This wasn't like vaporware. It was a year past when it was supposed to come out, but they took the time, they did it right. They actually got the rights to the original WrestleFest. So this is the actual,
Actual
not just a
sequel.
spiritual sequel, it's the actual sequel.
Nice. That's awesome.
So,
That's awesome.
and dude, honestly, like I said, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's fast, it's smooth, it's fun. It's fun. It's not some complicated look, man. Fire Pro Wrestling, for all of its realism, all of the customization that you can do, all the different things you can do, not fun for me. Not a fun game. It's too complicated. There's too many different button presses, too much. Like, man, I just want to be able to drop in, pick the wrestlers I want. Yeah, it would be cool to have customization, but for this game, that's not what this game is. This game,
Right.
drop in, have fun, enjoy the wrestling, enjoy the game, enjoy the characters, because they got the personalities in there. And this is not like, we're not talking 3D rendered, rotoscope models. We're talking like 16-bit, 32-bit kind of like pixel graphics.
Oh
And
yeah. No, it's straight up early '90s arcade.
it is
I mean,
fantastic.
yep, yep.
I mean,
So
maybe we're
speak.
a little biased because there's a lot of our ECW guys in it, but
Yeah, there is. BWO Dreamer, like I said, but maybe this is a great segue into our original thought for this whole episode was older or forgotten or maybe never that popular video games that you need to play. And I'm thinking, you and I kind of have developed a kind of a list here. Maybe we just go back and forth,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
and then we'll just kind of have some fun with this, because I think I've got your list and I've got my list in front of me. I think this will be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so go ahead, man. You go first. You go first.
Okay, so kind of this whole, like I said, forgotten, obscure, or just whatever type games out there. First thing that came to mind was Rush 2, um, Extreme Racing for the Nintendo 64. And I say San Francisco. I actually put that in parentheses because the actual title was just Rush 2. But I say San Francisco Rush because everyone knows that game as San Francisco Rush.
Right.
But for the 64, they kind of lobbed that off. But particularly in that game, stunt mode, and it's, if you've never played that game and stunt mode for that game, it is just ridiculous fun. It's crazy because you can just have like whatever vehicle that you want. I mean, that they're not like obviously you're not dropping in with exactly oh, I'm gonna have this like 1995 Mustang. You're getting like pickup truck. It's just like the most basic of cars, but you're getting these different vehicles, and then you're hitting these like crazy ramps, and you're doing these insane aerial moves, and you're trying to just up your score every time. But it's just fun because you're just doing basically nothing for 10 to 15 minutes. It's it's a great video gaming experience, and the sheer fact that it's one of the first times I can remember that you just kind of had free reign to do whatever you wanted. You
So
know,
that is something I might actually have to pick up then for the 64 because I've never actually played that one.
it's funny. Part of this too, like part of these games that I put down here, and I'm sure you're the same way. They just invoke certain memories. Brooks was actually the one that got me into that. He's like, "You have to check this out." And it was like, and so I put that on my. I actually found an emulator. Don't arrest me, FBI. And put that game on my phone just strictly for that. So I'd go back because it's like it works so well because the touch controls, especially for like the joystick on the N64 controller, it's like something you can pick up and just have fun. So it's yeah, Rush 2, particularly stunt mode. I'm not going to say anything about any of the other racing modes in that game, but yeah, it's so fun. It's ridiculous.
All right.
All right, so what you got?
So in that same vein, I'm gonna go with a game that we actually played together, you and I. Um, Burnout 2 for Xbox. And I say for Xbox, and I'm pretty sure this was in the PS2 as well. It was called Burnout 2 Director's Cut because it had crash mode.
Yes.
Interesting thing about this, I have Burnout 2 for the GameCube. For some reason, they didn't include crash mode. I have a feeling it's because of it being Nintendo, and Nintendo was really weird about all kinds of stuff for a long time. Um, but Burnout 2 for Director's Cut for the Xbox PS2, crash mode was very much, it seems like, in the vein of the stunt mode for Rush 2, but you would pick a vehicle, you would get set up with an intersection or some kind of, traffic, whatever, and then you had to cause as much damage as possible.
That is, so it's funny. So the Rush 2 thing was like such a precursor to that. And I can remember hours and hours and hours of Burnout. It's funny, actually, Tommy, he'll play Burnout, not Burnout 2, but he plays, Paradise City,
Hmm.
the remaster.
Yeah.
That's one of his favorite games. So it's funny that like this stuff just goes on and on and on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Well, Peyton and Peyton, same thing. Peyton has God, we've bought. I have Burnout Paradise City for, um, and I think maybe Burnout 4 for the 360, and then he played it on Xbox One because it was backwards compatible, and then we got the Burnout Paradise City remaster for Xbox, and he was not manipulating. He was monopolizing my Xbox with that. So when it came out for Switch, I was like, you know what, dude, you're getting it for Switch so that I can have my Xbox back. And so I got him Paradise City. So now we've bought Paradise City for like 4 times, I think now. But yeah, I mean, he's still digging that game. So,
Yeah, it's funny. I'm kind of the same way. We bought it when it first came out, and we bought the remaster for the PS4, and then we bought it for the Switch. And yeah, that's funny. But that whole like racing, like very particular things. That's funny because like both games that you and I mentioned, they're racing games to an extent,
mhm.
but like the between Rush or Burnout, like the things that we like are just like very compartmentalized things.
Yeah.
So
Let's destroy as much shit as we can.
exactly. Um, so I'll move on to completely different outside of racing. My next like obscure game is Jaws for the Nintendo.
Oh God, I hate
and
that game.
yeah, exactly. It's a game that people hate. I love that game just because it's crazy. That's one of the games that I aspire to beat. I never beat it. Um,
Oh,
no, I never beat it.
okay, so I beat it.
Oh, okay. You hate
And
it and you beat it.
this is why I hate it. All right, so this is why I hate it. I used to love that game when I was a kid. We would go down the street to the Hall's house. They were some of our neighbors, and they would always have pool parties and stuff. And as soon as I could, it was before I had an NES, and even after I got an NES, I would try and go inside and play theirs because they had cool games. And I played Jaws there all the time, Jaws and Zelda. But I Jaws would haunt me because I could I didn't know what to do. I would just like to go in the water and shoot the fish. And so, that I mean, it was very it's a very strange game. Um, I did beat it. Now, full confession, I did it on an emulator, but I learned this little trick where if you float up at the top of the water, Jaws can't hit you.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've tried that playing it like regular system,
Hmm.
and for whatever reason, I just never could get it to work. Now, granted, it could be the fact that I was using God knows what, but my original system. That's one of the few games I held on to. Um,
So my hatred comes from much from the same place that even though I love Contra, I hate Contra because I beat Contra and I beat Jaws. And for the amount of effort you have to put in to beat those games, and granted it's the NES, so what the hell do I expect? But the endings were so anticlimactic. I was just like, dude, really? Are you freaking serious right now? I just rammed Jaws with my boat friggin' 3 times to kill him because apparently he's like the strongest shark of all time. And that's all I get. Really? I hate you.
Yeah, it's fun. And that's the thing. A game does take an insane amount of effort to even get to the point where you can, kill them. I've gotten to where I've gotten a couple of hits on him and then I just die. But it's a fun game, and that's one of those things that like I had to put it in there because I know people hate it. But to me, it's just fun. One of those. I've been playing it like seems like my whole life. So that's a good one. So what's your next on tap?
So mine's gonna be. I'm going with a series here because they're. I never played the first one of, but I've played all of the ones that came after, and they're amazing. And I wish they would come out with more. But a spiritual successor to Perfect Dark and to GoldenEye, which is the Time Splitter series.
Mm,
If you're not familiar with it, it's basically you are part of the time police, for lack of a better term, which also that was in no, what was that? Time Squad. I don't know. There was an awesome cartoon on Cartoon Network, kind of same thing, but basically, they go through time to make sure that anomalies don't happen, and it's a first person shooter, and it's awesome. Um, the multiplayer on it was same system multiplayer. You could play online, but I really dug the same system because you could set up like 20 bots, and then you and 4 people playing against 20 bots, and it was insane and it was fun, and we had so much fun playing that game, um, those games rather. And then they had all kinds of like mini games that you could unlock and stuff. That was one of the first ones with zombies. There were zombie
yes.
monkeys, and you would be in this room, and these zombie monkeys would be coming in, and because they're monkeys they have smaller hit boxes, so it was tougher to shoot them. But it was such a good series, and the last one was future perfect. And then there were some hints that they were coming out with another one. They did like because they would spoof other game series.
Close
Anyway,
enough.
um, so what the last thing that we ever saw about a Time Splitters game came out or coming out was the Gears of War logo, but with a monkey's head in it.
Ooh,
And
nice.
I was really super looking forward to it, and then nothing, and nothing has ever come out about it since. So here's hoping that eventually somebody hears my prayers and releases some more Time Splitters games because
Hey, maybe
I think
this
it
is
could bring
the
about world peace.
hey, maybe this is the catalyst to bring it back.
Yeah, somebody's
Yeah,
gonna
that's
listen
a
to
good
our
one.
stupid little podcast and be like, "Hey, you know what? Those guys are right."
Yeah, let's do that. No, I remember those games. They were fun. Actually, I remember renting those games. Um, initially, no, they were a lot of fun. Yeah, it is funny. I didn't realize, I didn't really think about them until you even like you listed it here and was like, oh yeah, I forgot about those. Good games.
One of the best part about it too was in the multiplayer, the stupid crap that they would do. Like there was a character called the Shoal, and you know what it was? It was a group of fish. It was like a school of all these different fish that floated around with a machine gun and shot people and killed them. And then when it died, it went oh, and
You got to do that sound again.
and it was like Dude, it was great. I loved it. And it was just the stupidest stuff. Or you could be a stupid little monkey. God, I hated the monkeys because they were so small. They were like Odd Job in Goldeneye, where they were so small. The hitbox was so small. And you're running around and these little stupid monkeys with shotguns are coming after you and they're knocking you out because they're little tiny guys and you're trying to aim for where everybody else is. And then they got these little tiny hitboxes and it just pissed me off and I hate them.
Oh man. All right, so let's move on here.
Yeah.
That seems like a whole other episode.
Yeah, that's
Uh
that's actually, three treatments with my therapist.
there you go. There you go. All right, so I get really specific on a couple of these. So my apologies to our two listeners. I put as kind of odd games or forgotten or obscure. This has got to be by far the most obscure one is Extreme Warfare 9000 for the PC, which was a DOS text-based wrestling simulator,
Oh,
which has turned into a lot of other things. The guy that wrote it is the guy that's also behind Total Extreme Wrestling series, Adam Ryland.
okay.
Uh, so he does all these text-based simulators and is probably like the godfather of all that. The reason why I chose that game in particular was because that was the first game that kind of fell into my lap. I learned, later on that he had done several beforehand, and then obviously that he moved on and did these other projects. Um, but it's so simple, and the great thing about it was, like I kind of said with Rush 2, you kind of had like this freedom to do whatever you wanted. Was you could sit there and you can make your own company. So you could put in like me and you as wrestlers, and you could put in like whoever else, and and just you can play around some stats and whatnot, and you can just kind of like make matches and just let's see what happens. And it's so cool because then the other thing that was awesome about it was that it kept history. So it's like who's been your last world title holder, who's been your last tag title holders. There's really cool things for this, like if you think about it, archaic concept. Um, but for the time, the things were it was really just fun to watch to kind of see like what would happen. And I'm sure like if I go back on it now, there's some like really heavy patterns to it, particularly with like certain numbers and watching how people are ranked. But it was so fun because you could sit there and like, oh, I'm going to run out with the top 20 WWF wrestlers or the top 20 WCW wrestlers or the top 20 ECW wrestlers at the time, and just kind of see like, okay, what's really going to happen. Just a cool, fun, at the time free game, and I spent probably way more time playing it than I should have. But it's one I always think on. I always reminisce on just a great game, and the guy behind it, like I said, Adam Ryland is yeah. If you're listening, Adam, you're a hero.
Yeah, and you had got me the Total Extreme Wrestling, and dude, it is fun, and it's amazingly deep. Like
Hmm.
you could get lost for hours just setting
Oh
stuff
yeah.
up.
Yep. And that's the thing. First thing I did when I played that was I'm gonna look and see if anyone has created any universes, and my God, have they? So like, oh yeah, do I want to start in 1995? Yes, and I still cannot fathom how people spent the time to put together 1,200 plus wrestlers from September 1st, 1995. It's like it just blows my mind.
Yeah,
But very very cool. So what you got next?
I'm gonna go with one that again, it's. See, here's the thing with most of mine, I can't say that they're necessarily forgotten or obscure. It's more or less most of them. Some of them are, but most of them are just games that I really wish they would come out with more of. And that's definitely the case with my next one. It's Conquer.
Oh, oh,
So,
dude, how many times did you and I play Beach?
right?
Or just listening to the damn Great Mighty Pooh song over and over again. Oh,
Dude, when so one of the cool things about Xbox is the since they bought Rare, the only cool thing they've done with Rare um, is that Rare Replay, where it's got
mm-hmm.
all of the games on it, and it's got It's got Conquer on it. And if I remember correctly, so here's what's weird with Microsoft. So on N64, Conker's Bad Fur Day comes out. It was one of the last games released for the system. Um, it was incredibly vulgar for not just for an N64 game, like for a game on a Nintendo console. It was incredibly vulgar for any game at that time um, that wasn't on PC. And so, but there were still some things that were bleeped out or censored. So then we get to probably like 2005, 2006, I think it was, and Conquer Live and Reloaded comes out for the Xbox because after the N64, um, and after I think it must have been during the GameCube, yeah, during the GameCube's era because that's when uh, this came out for Xbox. Microsoft bought Rare,
Right.
and so Microsoft released Conquer Live and Reloaded, and they censored things that weren't censored in the 64 version, which blew my mind and it pissed me off. Um, which the fact that I got pissed off over censorship in a video game is stupid, but it pissed me off. Um, and so luckily, this version, the Rare Replay, it has the 64 version on it, so it's not as censored, which is fantastic. And I showed Peyton the Great Mighty Pooh because, of course, I did because I'm that that's what a great father figure I am. Is I show my pseudo son uh, a video game where a giant hunk of singing crap is in it and singing about how gross he is, and you throw toilet paper at them and throw him pieces of corn for his teeth. Um, but that game, man, it had so much potential for a sequel. It was so ripe for the pick or ripe for the picking, and Microsoft has done nothing with it. Just like every other Rare franchise that they bought, um, they damn near killed um, Banjo Kazooie. They made what's the other one that they really butchered? Um, I don't remember. There's so many good franchises that they just killed when they bought Rare. I'm really hoping that they turn that around. But a good,
Yeah, there's some others on there. It's funny. Like I said, you and I had some great times with Conquer, and so did everyone in our circle did, and was so glad to see, you mentioned that because, like I said, like yeah, certainly maybe not forgotten or obscure, but it's one of those games that it's not necessarily always at the top of everyone's list.
right.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, I want to play Madden or I'm going to do this, with whatever. Like Conquer is not usually up there, but it probably should be. Just a fantastic game, and it's a shame that, like you said, it just kind of went away. I
Right,
mean,
right.
could have done so much more with it. I'm gonna name something because I noticed you have more on your list than I do. So I'll throw one actually that came to mind. Um, and I won't talk too much about it, but Syndicate Plus, um, another PC game. It's a shooter, and I don't know. Did you play Syndicate Plus, any of those?
No, I was aware of it, but I didn't. I wasn't a big PC gamer back in the day too much. Mine was mostly limited to shareware stuff.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. Came out in the early '90s. Just one of those typical, over the top, platformers. I think my first real experience with it was because my parents had an Amiga. So being a PC game, but it also had been released with the Amiga. I had some experience there with it. It's one of those games that I don't think, I'm sure it has a kind of a cult following these days. I kind of just, you know, think about that as obviously one of those games I spent a lot of time playing, particularly when I was, early teens or preteen or teenager, which is funny because it's a, pretty massive shooter. um, but, granted the graphics back then were, nothing. So it's like, oh yeah, my person got killed by this dot. Um, but the cool thing with Syndicate Plus, though, as you kind of went on, to me anyway, and again, I'm gonna, probably piss somebody off with saying this. It was kind of a precursor to, and again, I'm not saying because you didn't have the freedom, it wasn't the open world environment, but the way the map looked was the precursor to like the original GTA.
Okay, that
You
top
know,
down.
yeah, that view, and it was cool for the time because like, oh yeah, you're just kind of running around shooting up, and I'm not talking about like Smash TV. It's kind of like that side 3D type deal, but it was cool because you had that that level of I'm still like just blowing up stuff, and shooting things, but again, it was just kind of a not a fun, ridiculous type game like a Smash TV would be, because there was a lot more strategy involved with it. But it was a fun one, so I'll throw that on there. I didn't have it in my notes, but that's definitely got to give a hat tip to Syndicate or Syndicate Plus on that one.
Okay. All right. So next up on my list, I'm gonna jump around a little bit on it. Shining Force, which was another tactical RPG. It's in the same vein as Fire Emblem. Lots of different characters. There's hidden characters you could find if you did certain things at certain times. You could, if you went into a certain cave after you fought this many of this character, this other guy would be there, and it was really cool. It was kind of before its time, but really cool game, really cool series, and it had a good narrative, and I just really liked it. Sadly, I had it for Genesis. I had the sequel for Genesis, and I had the remake for Game Boy Advance, and I should never gotten rid of it. Dude, the remake on Game Boy Advance, first of all, it improved on the original that came out on Genesis, but it's now like impossible to find and it's super expensive. Um, so yeah, great job, Bob, on holding on to that one. But super fun series. It's something I
Oh,
wish they would bring back.
completely agree. I remember playing Shining Force and Shining Force 2 on the Genesis, and they are absolutely fantastic RPGs. They were to the Genesis as to what, to me, the time Final Fantasy was to the Super Nintendo. I'm not going to say that they're in the same vein. You know, Final
Right.
Fantasy Americanized versions 2 and 3 are far superior games. However, if you had no Genesis at the time and you were able to play the Shining Force games, they were awesome games. Um, I had a lot of fun with them. Like you said, they're great stories. And then again, just one of those things that just kind of disappeared, and it sucks because they were good. They were legitimate games. Yeah, it could have been a little something more to them, but no, completely agree.
Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic games.
All right, what'd you have next?
All right. And I said I had some oddballs here. Heroes of Might and Magic 2, again, another PC game. I grew up a PC gamer, so but now turn-based strategy. In fact, I play this game probably probably have played it every year since it came out. Came out in the mid 90s. And only really this particular one, because I say Heroes of Might and Magic 2. Yes, there is a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and so forth. And there was a first one, but this one, for whatever reason, stuck with me. It's cool because it's easy, and my favorite part about that game is playing as a necromancer, because you can sit there and just go around and kill peasants or some like really low end, creature, and just turn them into skeletons and have them for your army. And so
So
you stack enough skeletons, you're good to go.
would you
And
say
you
you
can,
would be burninating the peasants?
yes, burn it, burn it. But no, it's just such a fantastic, fun game that I go back to over and over again. Um, you know, the subsequent ones in the series, they're fine, but there's something about the simplicity and just the overall, playability of a game, and that's what strikes me with 2. So yeah, definitely gotta say Heroes of Might and Magic 2.
Okay.
Which we got.
All right. So I'm gonna burn through 2 here because I've got it. Like you said, I got a couple more than you do on here. I'll burn through Goonies 2 for the original Nintendo, which a lot of people thought when I mean at least when I was growing up, the people that I was friends with when we were little and this game came out, we thought it was supposed to be a sequel to the movie. Um, Little did we know that in Japan there actually was a Goonies 1 video game. And so this was actually for some reason they Konami didn't bring over Goonies 1, but they brought over Goonies 2. Um, and it was an oddball game, man. It was like an action game, side scroller with multiple levels, and then you could go into these little weird 3D levels, and there was always this weird dude in some of them. Sometimes there was an Eskimo, and none of it made any sense. It didn't. I mean, it followed the movie to a degree, but there's crazy stuff like Annie was a mermaid, and just out there stuff. So that game was always fun, and I showed Peyton that, and he was like, "What the heck is this game?" And then of course he realized he could punch the old guy in the nuts, and so he did that and giggled a lot. I did too, but whatever. Second one I'm going to bring up is Earthbound for the SNES, and to me, I was never a huge Final Fantasy guy. The Final Fantasy game that I like the most, and big surprise from the Shining Force and Fire Emblem love, I liked Final Fantasy Tactics, specifically Final Fantasy Tactics Advance on the Game Boy Advance. That was the first Final Fantasy game that I really got into, and I was like, "Yo, this is my jam." Um, but Earthbound to me was the best RPG on the SNES, hands down. Um, Turn-based, oddball, um, cool setting because it was a contemporary setting. The weird little remixes of popular songs that they put in it. Uh, it was just an awesome game. And as you learn about the background of the game, some of it becomes a little bit horrifying when you find out what certain things were and different theories behind it. But my final thoughts on it are Nintendo, bring us more Earthbound. We want Mother 3 localized, translated, brought to us on a silver platter. And if you don't deliver it, I don't know what we're going to do, but it's not going to be nice. I'll probably send you a strongly worded letter.
And I've heard there's talks to put that game on the service for the Switch, but I don't know.
I hope so, but I
hope so.
every time I hear that it's happening, I hear something else where they're like, "No, we have no plans whatsoever to do that." And so I don't know, man. I'd like for it to happen. I could play it through an emulator, but I want an official. I want to support Nintendo. I want to give you money. I want to give you the monies. So take the monies.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because there are loads of games that are like that for whatever reason they just I don't know. It's like it's almost like they're teasing us. Like, oh yeah, we'll say that we're going to do this, but we might not. We're just going to keep you hanging.
All right. Meanwhile, we're going to throw all these Earthbound characters and Mother characters into Smash Brothers, and we're not going to do anything with it.
Yeah. Nope. That's about it.
Yeah.
I go with what's popular. All right, so I'll go forward here. And speaking of the service, which I think this game has found kind of newfound popularity with anyway, River City Ransom for the Nintendo, which yeah.
Do you remember the ROM hack that we used to play on the Dreamcast when I had the emulator on the Dreamcast?
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. Yes.
So I'm just gonna real quick talk about the ROM hack, and then I'll let you get into the game. So the ROM hack we had, I don't know why, but I downloaded this big pack of ROMs online. I don't remember which service I used, probably LimeWire. Um, Downloaded this huge thing of ROMs for NES games, and it's supposed to be every NES game ever released. And River City Ransom ROM hack, all the bats were turned into like dildos, And like it made all of the women in the game nude. You'd go into the shop and you could buy like all kinds of sex toys and stuff as weapons. It was just kind of, well, you know what? Come to think of it, it was like Saints Row the Third before Saints Row the Third was.
That's true. Good point.
So maybe that's who made it.
Good point. No, that
Well, go
game.
ahead. Back to the actual game.
Yeah, no, yeah. So now it's funny that was one of those that you could actually build your character through it. A bit repetitive at times, but it was always fun. Yeah, it was a little bit of a button masher. But the cool thing was you could vary up your weapons, chains and knuckles and rocks and these different things that you had that just kind of made it fun. The greatest thing about that game was that it was one of the first times that you actually had a simultaneous great two-player game.
Yes.
That's the thing that always sticks to me with that game. And it didn't matter. Like you could be like really experienced playing it, or just brand new to it, and you could just pick it up because it's a button masher. If you're wise enough to it, then like, oh yeah, I gotta wait and I'm gonna find that secret shop in the tunnel and buy this certain book. I'm gonna save my money and all these things. But if you weren't wise to that, like you could just sit there and kind of coast along with whoever was playing. And the great thing about that was that yeah, even though if you died, you lost half your money, like, and as long as your partner stayed on this, stayed alive, and you just like walked over the next screen, you're back.
Yeah.
So that's the great thing about that game was that you didn't have to necessarily worry about restarting. So it was cool. It's just and like I said, it's on the online service now. Good to see, but always one of my most favorite games. I don't think anyone ever really gives it the talk. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's a good one.
Well, and you know what's funny is, being in America, obviously we get, especially at that time, we weren't privy to what exactly was going on in Japan and the Japanese gaming scene with some of the stuff. And River City Ransom actually spawned a whole series of games. Um, if you remember Crash and the Boys, that was spun out of that. Super Dodgeball was spun out of that.
Hmm.
There was a soccer game that used the same sprites. It was spun out of that, and these were all supposed to be in the same universe. Super Dodgeball is one of my all-time favorite NES games too. Um, but there's a ton of games, and it was so influential. It even inspired games that come out now, like the Scott Pilgrim versus the World game that's been re-released on Switch and I think the modern consoles. It's very much in the same vein as that game, so it's had a lasting impact.
Yeah, and very well should. That's just one of those games. Again, I have fond memories playing it when I was younger. Tommy and I have played it. In fact, that's one of his requests whenever we load that up is to play that specific game. So that's it's a good one, and I felt that certainly worth mentioning here. So I know you've got a few more. I've got like a one left. So
Yeah. So two more quick notes about River City Ransom. I remembered as you were talking, you know how when they would get hit and they would like make utterances when they
yeah,
would get
barf,
hit, like
barf.
"Oof," or yeah, yeah. Do you remember, dude? I'll never stop laughing when I picture them in the ROM hack we had. They would say piss, and it was just the stupidest thing ever. But the other thing is, there was actually a couple sequels to River City Ransom that actually just got released for the 3DS not too long ago. Well, I say not too long ago, but maybe like a year or two ago, and they were like Amazon exclusive.
No, unaware of this.
Yeah, so I don't know if the kids still have 3DSs? If they do, you can probably scoop them up. I think they were like $20.
No kidding. I have to
Yeah.
check those out.
So, all right. So on to the next one. So we'll go. The next three that I've got on here are actually all four of the next ones I have are all Nintendo system games, and it goes from GameCube to Wii. We skip over the Wii U because it's the Wii U, and we get to the Switch. So the first game is going to be Cubivore for the GameCube. And I have distinct memories of this game in the window at Electronics Boutique next to the food court at the Deptford Mall. Um, and in particular, it's so weird, dude. In particular, I remember being at the mall. You were coming home from Kentucky from school, and I was at the mall and I was getting ready to go home, and I'm trying to figure out what game do I get, what game do I get, and I almost bought Cubivore, but I bought Super Monkey Ball instead.
Mm.
I should have bought Cubivore because
Monkey Ball though.
Monkey Ball is
No,
really good. Cubivore, if you have just the disc, is like $300 now.
really.
If you have it complete, you could get $500 to $600, up to $1,000 for a complete
Wow.
in-box copy of Cubivore. Um, I did at one point own it. I did buy it later on down the line, and I sold it because I thought it had hit a peak. But it was a super fun game. You're a little cube. You go around, you attack other little cube animals, and then you rip off like arms and legs and stuff, and you grow horns and you mutate, and then the whole idea, it's like life, and then you fight these monsters, you beat them, and then you go mate and you die. And then you reincarnate as your own kid, and then you have to go through the whole process again, and you just do that over and over and over and over again. And it's the weirdest game. It's the most one of the most Japanese games I've ever played in my life, but I love it. It was freaking out there, man, but I loved it. It was, and it sounds like it's a violent game. It's really not that violent. It was actually kind of a like a relaxing, soothing game,
Which
which
is hysterical,
maybe,
consider the way you just described it.
yeah, I mean, maybe that's just because I'm screwed up in the head, which is a distinct possibility. Um, but that game was awesome. Um, let's go on to Fortune Street. Fortune Street. I really one day I swear to God I'm going to pin you down and make you play this game. Not physically pin you down. I'm not trying to get that weird. But Fortune Street is a game for the Wii, which you can still. Oddly enough, I swear I saw this in Target not that long ago. Um, but Fortune Street is like a mix of Mario Party and Monopoly. And in the one for the Wii, now this game has been around since the NES. Okay, um, but and I actually have it on my phone as well. Um, not with the Nintendo characters or the Dragon Quest characters, but I do have a version of it on my phone. But for the Wii, it was Dragon Quest characters and Mario characters mixed together. Um, Super fun. It's a board game, but with mini games. You don't really control the mini games as much as you do in Mario Party, but they're just a fun little distraction. You can screw people over. You can buy their properties without without their consent. Basically, you can buy it out from under them. So
Nice.
that adds a level to it. You can actually buy stocks in people's areas. So like if I have say for the sake of ease of understanding, say I had Boardwalk and Park Place, which are definitely not in this game, but say I had bought them and I was putting properties on them, you could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to invest in those properties, and then any money that I make, you get a portion of.
Oh, nice.
So it's cool. It's got these little fail safes set up, and it's a really fun game. Now on the flip side of that is Dokapon Kingdom, which Dokapon Kingdom came out originally for the PS2. A version of it came out for the DS. I've got the Wii version. The Wii version is the one that's really hard to find. It's again, it's another one of those games that I luckily bought this one for $20 at GameStop one day. Just
Okay.
randomly bought it, and the next thing I know, I'm looking online and it's selling for $200.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So of course, what I did is I had found one that was complete in box, and I sold that for like 200, and then bought a disc only version. And now I really wish that I had the complete in box, because that one's like again like $600. But whatever. Not going to sell it anyway because the game is super fun. This one is more like a mix of an RPG and Mario Party. So you roll the dice, you move along a game board, and you go to different areas, and the enemies level up. There's different quests you have to go on. You can attack each other. You can send robot assassins after each other. Um, it's nuts. It's super nuts, super fun game. The back of the box actually says the game where you screw your friends or something like that, or say goodbye to your friendships, or I don't know, something like that, because they know that people are going to be like, you can do all kinds of stuff. So say you and I were playing and we were battling and you beat me, you'll get a list of things that you can do to me. You could either change my name, you could draw on my face, you could change my hair. When you change your hair, one of the styles you can choose is poop. So you just walk around with like a curl of poop on your head. Um, or you can take their money, you can take equipment, you can take towns that they've saved, or you can just leave them alone. So there's a number of different things. It's a super fun game. I highly recommend it if you can get it on the cheap, or somehow play it on the cheap. PS2 is actually probably your best option for that. It hasn't gone up to insane prices. I think it's like 20 or 30 bucks for PS2. Um, and then so we'll let you hit yours, and then I'll hit my last one.
That sounds good. So my last one that I had, and was thinking of it, and I marked this as PlayStation, and only meaning because this is hit between like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 4 with downloads, whatever, was the Manhunt/Manhunt 2. It's one of those obscure, not so obscure. Um, it was one of those games that several countries banned.
Yes.
But and probably for just reasons. But I remember, and maybe this plays into certain things that I like, that this was like one of the first absolute sheer, like, you had this really sick control over your character to basically murder people however, um and with a great storyline, as odd as that may sound. But because again, it's put up by Rockstar, it's put up by those people that GTA and those other types, but it was much more of a storyline, honed in on, not nearly as open world as the GTA stuff was. But because of the sheer level of violence, particularly with Manhunt 2, I think that caught a lot more flack than the original one did. It just, obviously, was a banned, game. And I think a lot of people have this with certain Rockstar games, like Bully. I never played that one, so I don't really have a frame of reference on that game in particular. But I think there are certain games that they put out that aren't GTA that you either love or hate.
Right.
And I think this is the same type of thing with Manhunt. I know, like I said, Bully was the same way, and some other things that they've done. This is one of those
State
that,
of emergency.
yeah, State of Emergency. Yep, I actually really like that game.
Oh, me too.
But there's people that absolutely hated it. This is in that vein to me, and I just have to be on the kind of person that absolutely loved it. And I think though it's one of those that, and I hate to put it this way, I'm kind of glad to see that they like stopped doing anything with it, because I really don't know what would have gone on beyond that for as messed up as it was,
Right.
you know.
Well,
So
what I want to know is, did you ever play it for Manhunt 2 for the Wii?
no, I had it for the place PS2,
Okay.
3,
'Cause,
whatever system it came out for.
apparently it came out on the Wii and it had motion controls, and I just really need to know how that worked.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like,
Do you
tying
take
the trash bag
Wiimote?
around, like
Yeah, you take the Wiimote and the nunchuck and you like use the wire in between them to like cut somebody's throat or whatever.
yeah, that's the only thing that makes sense in that usage. I don't know. It's really, if you think about it, it's such a screwed up game.
Oh, totally.
But it's a good. To me, it's a good one. I thoroughly enjoyed that
Yeah.
whole, the releases of that. Ever played it for the Wii though? That would be fun.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of that game. There was the one Mad World for the Wii that came out. It was so bloody. Like the game was made in black and white, and the only thing that had color besides black and white was the blood.
Mm.
And it was just black and white and a ton of red, because that's just what they did. It was super weird aesthetic choice, but the announcers in that game cracked me up too. But all right, so we get to my last one. My last one is going to be Arms, and it's kind of weird for it to be a forgotten, obscure game. It's brand new. Well, not brand new. It came out in I think 2016, 2017 for the Switch, and it's kind of like a spiritual successor to Punch Out, but it's more of a 3D arena battle. Um, there's no ring outs. It's just you have these extendable arms with different weaponized fists, and you throw them across this, the screen, or you get in close for close combat and you beat people up. This is really cool. It was kind of, I don't want to say it was bare bones. It was fun, and there was a lot to do, but I would like to see them release a sequel with more to do. Um, Maybe some different modes, some different. It just seemed kind of short. Like Peyton and I beat it, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. I wish we had more of this. So I'm hoping down the line they build a little bit more onto the game, and they've. I will say it's been amazing the support that Nintendo showed to it. Free updates, free DLC, all kinds of stuff, and it went on for a while where they were introducing new characters and stuff. I think they ended up adding somewhere between like 3 and 4 brand new characters just for free. You know,
Yeah, that's cool. That's one of those games that like I've always read about, very highly regarded, but never played. So um,
it's
you know,
apparently kind of hard to find now too.
really,
Yeah. Just a quick Amazon search pulls up. Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. It's not. It's actually, I guess, not as hard to find. There was a time when I was looking for it, um, and I couldn't find it anywhere for below like $100. And now I'm going on Prime has it for 55, 51. So
yeah. So if I remember correctly, it was one of the first Switch releases, wasn't it?
it was in that first year, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
If it wasn't 2016, it was 2017. But it was relatively early. One of the first Nintendo first party games to come out.
Yeah, one of the first ones that to me made actual use of the Joy Cons, and you know,
Yeah,
at least from my understanding anyway.
yeah, yeah. You can play it either with the Pro controller. You can play it, handheld mode, or you can play it motion controls with the Joy Cons, and you can actually, you're punching as you're doing it, and then it reads how you turn the Joy-Con on how you direct the punch. So it was pretty cool. They did some really cool things with it, and it's something I would definitely recommend to people for the Switch.
Very cool, very cool. Now I think we hit some good stuff there. I say we'll pump the brakes there. We have some other video game stuff, but we'll save that for another one.
Yeah, well, we've already kept you guys hostage long enough. I guess we'll release you. Um, I guess, and so we will be back soon enough with more nerdy goodness, more video game talk, and some more just random whatever we come up with, and you'll listen to it because the two of you that have been listening are addicted apparently, and you enjoy audio punishment. So we're gonna keep doling it out.
Definitely. So sounds good, man. We'll do it again, and thanks for listening.
All right.